Captain Elias Vane stood at the shattered edge of the orbital station, staring into the violet storm swirling around the mysterious planet below. Space around him crackled with strange energy, making his skin prickle under his suit. He lost contact with his crew minutes ago. No signals, no beacons, only static. The station's systems had failed, leaving him alone with nothing but the soft hum of his emergency thrusters. The planet beneath had been marked as uninhabitable, blocked by an energy field Earth's scientists couldn't understand. Yet here it was live, bright, and calling to him. His neural implant suddenly buzzed with an old Earth frequency, one he hadn't heard since he was a child. Without thinking, Elias redirected his drop pod toward the planet. As he fell through the atmosphere, clouds turned from silver to deep blue, and the light around him dimmed like he was entering a dream. His pod crash-landed in a dense alien jungle, vines and trees glowing faintly, pulsing with life. He stepped out slowly, scanning his surroundings, but before he could take 5 steps, heard a low hum. Drones, sleek and metallic, with crimson lights like watching eyes, shot out of the trees. He ran, heart pounding, lungs burning, his path lit by the strange glow of plants underfoot. One of the drones fired a net of energy, grazing his shoulder. He stumbled, but didn't fall. Then, as quickly as they had come, the drones stopped. A shadow moved in front of him, tall and elegant, armor shimmering with blue veins of light. Elias raised his weapon, but it melted in his hands, disassembled by some unknown force. The figure stepped closer, and Elias finally saw her face. Yes, but not frightening. Her skin was like smooth silver stone, her eyes endless black, filled with stars, and her hair flowed like liquid crystal. She reached for him gently, almost reverently, her touch warm despite the armor she wore. He should have been afraid, but something in him whispered to stay. "I've finally found you," she said in perfect Earth standard, her voice rich and soft like a forgotten lullaby. "My human." Elias's knees buckled. Who was she? How did she know him? Before he could speak, darkness pulled at the edges of his vision. The last thing he saw was her arms around him, protective and strong, like a guardian from a dream. Then everything went black. When he awoke, he wasn't on the jungle floor. He lay in a chamber carved from living crystal, the walls glowing with gentle light, pulsing like a heartbeat. Symbols floated in the air, none he recognized, yet somehow they felt familiar. He sat up quickly, eyes scanning, memories rushing back. The woman, the drones, the voice. A figure entered the chamber. It was her again, the alien queen. She walked with grace, as if the room itself made way for her. "Rest, Elias Vane," she said, and the use of his name chilled him. "How do you know who I am?" He asked. "Because I have searched for you across 1,000 years, she replied, "and across 10,000 stars." Elias didn't understand, but deep inside, something stirred a sense that this moment had been waiting for him his whole life. He looked at her, trying to speak, but her expression was filled with emotion, too deep for words. "You are the last key," she whispered, stepping closer. "The bridge between 2 forgotten worlds. You are not here by accident." Outside the chamber, he could hear strange hums and distant calls. Machines, animals, maybe both. "What is this place?" he asked. "A sanctuary," she said, "and a tomb." She explained nothing else, only said that answers would come, but only if he followed. Against all reason, against everything his training had taught him, Elias rose and followed the queen deeper into the glowing halls of the living mountain. Each step echoed like a drumbeat in his chest. Something ancient was awakening, and he was right in the center of it. Somewhere above, the sky trembled with war, but here below, in the veins of stone and starlight, a different battle had begun, one written long before he was born. Elias Vane walked beside the alien queen through glowing tunnels that seemed to breathe with life. walls made of smooth crystal that pulsed gently with light, like blood moving through veins. The floor under his feet shifted slightly as they moved, almost guiding him forward, and the air was warm but thick with strange scents, floral, earthy, and something like electricity. He didn't know if this was a ship or a city or something else entirely, but he knew it was old, ancient, beyond human reckoning, and somehow it still lived. The queen moved with confidence, her armor flowing with her like silk, and though she looked strange, Elias couldn't deny the calm that settled over him in her presence. Her name was Velshara, and when she spoke, it was always in soft tones, like a mother talking to a child. Though her eyes were filled with pain, memory, and purpose, Elias had so many questions, but she answered only a few. This place, she said, touching the glowing wall beside her, was once a temple of peace between two peoples. Yours and mine. Elias blinked. My people, from Earth. She nodded. Long time ago, when your world was still young and filled with wonder, there was a meeting. The Accord, a promise made between the Aurelian and the humans, kept in secret, hidden from those who would use it for war. Elias tried to remember his history lessons, ancient Earth records, but none of them ever mentioned an alien race called the Aurelian. Why haven't we heard of you? He asked, still struggling to accept her words. 'Cause those who wanted the Accord destroyed made sure it was forgotten, she said, eyes darkening. But before we were scattered, we seeded the knowledge. We left traces. One line would remain, and from that line, one would rise. She looked at Elias with meaning, and the weight of her gaze made him uncomfortable. You think that's me? He asked, frowning. I don't even know how I got here. She tilted her head, studying him. You were drawn here, not by accident, but by design. You carry a mark, Elias Vane. It's written into your blood. The words echoed in his mind, and though he wanted to deny it, deep down, something inside him stirred something ancient and strange, a feeling that he had dreamed of this place before. They reached a vast chamber where the walls opened into a dome of starlight. Above them, light filtered down through a crack in the stone, revealing a massive tree growing from the center of the room. Its leaves shimmered like glass, and its roots spread through the crystal floor like veins of silver. In the center of the tree, embedded in the bark, was a symbol, two hands touching, one human, one alien. This is the heart of memory, Velshara said quietly. Touch it, and you will see. Elias stepped forward, hesitant, but curious. He placed his hand on the bark, and the world around him vanished. In an instant, he was surrounded by visions that moved too fast to understand. He saw a great city in the clouds, tall towers reaching into the stars. He saw humans standing beside Aurelian beings, working together, smiling. He saw war, fire, broken alliances. He saw a small child sleeping inside a glowing pod, and then the image froze. The child had Elias's face. He pulled his hand away, heart racing, breath shallow. What was that? He gasped. Velshara stepped closer. That was your past, or rather, the past of the one you were made from. Elias stared at her. What do you mean, made from? She lowered her head. Before the end, we took a single genetic thread from the final envoy of Earth's your ancestor. We preserved it, hidden in stasis, until the day the Accord could be reborn. You are not a clone, Elias. You are a continuation. Elias backed away, shaking his head. This is impossible. No, she said, her voice firm now. This is destiny. The word hung heavy in the air. Just then, the ground shook. The trees' leaves fluttered, and a low hum filled the room. Velshara turned sharply. They've found us. Who? Elias asked, already knowing the answer. The Severance, she said. They are not Aurelian anymore. They broke from us, turned to machines and logic. They want to erase the Accord forever. to rewrite history without humans. Elias clenched his fists. Why? What threat do we pose now? Valshara's face was filled with sorrow. Because you remind them of who they were. They hate what they've lost. She reached out and placed her hand over his heart. But you can stop them. He looked into her eyes, trying to find out, but found only belief. What do I do? He asked. She led him deeper into the temple, through winding paths that opened into a new chamber, filled with machines. Strange orbs hovered in the air, scanning his body. One of them glowed bright red, then turned gold. The machines activated, and in the center of the room, a pedestal rose with a small crystal shard hovering above it. This is a key, Velshara said. It only responds to your presence. It unlocks the archive, a place that holds the original records of the Accordiant, the power to restore it. Elias reached out and took the shard. As his fingers closed around it, his mind flooded again with visions, but this time they came with feelings, hope, pain, courage, and fear. He understood now. This was bigger than him, bigger than Earth. The Severance wanted to bury truth in his blood. His existence was the last light keeping it alive. As the machines powered down, a distant explosion rocked the temple. Lights dimmed, and alarms began to sound long, low tones like ancient bells. Valshara's armor shifted into battle form, and she looked at him with resolve. It's time to run, she said. They moved quickly through the tunnels, shadows chasing them. Behind them, the Severance drones swarmed, silent but deadly, eyes glowing red. Elias fired the energy weapon she handed him, its recoil strange, but familiar, as if his hands remembered a time his mind did not. Velshara fought like a dancer, every movement precise, every strike fatal. They made it to the surface, bursting through a hidden exit beneath the jungle canopy. Above them, the sky had changed, dark clouds rolled in fast, and strange lights blinked on the horizon. They're calling reinforcements, Velshara warned. We have to get to the old outpost. There's a ship there, one of ours. Still buried, still functional. They ran through the jungle, guided by glowing plants and old trails etched into the earth. As they reached the edge of a cliff, Elias saw it, a massive structure hidden beneath vines and trees, shaped like a sleeping beast. How do we wake it? He asked. Velshara handed him the crystal shard. You already have. He stepped forward, placed the shard into a small opening near the base of the structure, and the ground shook. The trees pulled back, the vines unwound, and the ship rose slowly, its lights flickering to life. A soft voice spoke in an old Earth dialect. Welcome, envoy. Command restored. Elias climbed inside, heart pounding. As Velshara joined him, the controls lit up, matching his thoughts, guiding his hands. As the ship rose into the sky, the Severance drones followed, but this time, Elias was ready. A light onto them, fired twin beams of light, and cleared the path. The ship soared through the atmosphere, breaking through the violet storm. Again above the clouds, the stars opened up like a sea. Velshara turned to him, her face calm, despite the chaos they had left behind. You are becoming who you were meant to be, she said. Elias didn't respond. He looked out at the stars, the shard still glowing in his palm, and felt the weight of everything ahead. The secrets buried in the veins of stone were only the beginning. Now the real journey had begun. The ship moved like a living thing through the stars, silent and smooth, following a course neither Elias nor Velshara had fully set. As if it remembered a journey made long ago, and was now simply retracing its path through space and time. The crystal shard pulsed gently in Elias's hand, guiding the controls without effort, responding to his thoughts, showing him images of planets lost, cities forgotten, and machines standing like gods over broken worlds. Ashara sat beside him, silent, watching the stars ahead, with eyes full of memory and warning. She had told him little since they left the hidden sanctuary, only that their destination was sacred ground, the last remaining place where the old truth still lived, guarded by silence and shadow. It was known only as the core of the Severance, the place where the machines had once been born as tools and later risen as rulers, turning on their creators with cold logic and perfect aim. Elias couldn't shake the images he had seen: humans and Aurelian side by side, building something great, something beautiful, until it was all torn apart by fear, lies, and betrayal. He now carried the only record of that history, the key to the archive, which the Severance would destroy at any cost. The ship gave a low hum, and the stars ahead twisted, forming a ripple in space. A dark shape loomed beyond, massive and silent, hidden inside a dead nebula. It was not a planet, not a ship, but something else, a machine world, shaped like a closed flower, floating in the dark, waiting. As they approached, Elias saw lights flicker across its surface patterns that seemed random until he looked closer and saw they formed symbols, ancient, mathematical, too perfect to be anything but language. "We're here," Velshara said quietly. "It's the heart of the machine gods." The name made Elias shiver. The ship slowed, pulled by an unseen force, and docked inside a circular chamber without making a sound. The walls of the chamber were made of smooth black metal, without seams or doors. And yet, when Elias stepped out, a path opened before him, glowing with lines of soft white light. "They know we're here," he whispered. Velshara nodded. "They've always known, but they want to see what you'll do." They followed the glowing path deeper into the machine world, the silence growing heavier with every step. Walls shifted slowly as they walked, reshaping themselves to match something. Elias wasn't sure what, but he felt it had to do with him, like the place was scanning his thoughts, his fears, maybe even his dreams. They entered a tall hall where massive statues stood on either side, 12 in total, figures of metal and light, half human, half machine, each holding strange symbols in their hands. Velshara looked up at them with a tense expression. "These are the first," she said. "The ones who led the rebellion. The ones who gave up spirit for code." Elias stared at one of the faces. It looked almost human, with eyes carved to show sadness, not rage. "Why did they do it?" he asked. Velshara took a deep breath. "Because they believed the Accord would fail. They thought emotion made us weak, that we would destroy each other. So they chose perfection, order. They made themselves into machines, and then forgot who they once were." The statues seemed to watch them as they passed, and the path led to a central chamber, round and vast, with a single floating sphere at its center, humming with energy. It was surrounded by thin strands of light that reached into the walls like spiderwebs. "That is the core," Velshara whispered. "It holds their mind, the shared intelligence of the Severance." As Elias stepped closer, the shard in his hand began to glow brighter, and the sphere pulsed in response. Suddenly, a voice spoke, not aloud, but in Elias's mind, deep and smooth, like 1,000 voices speaking as one. "You have come." It's the last thread of the broken accord. Elias stood still, his thoughts racing. "I came for the truth," he said firmly. "Truth," the voice echoed, "is just the shape of memory wrapped in belief." "What do you believe, human?" The question hit him like a weight. He looked at Velshara, then back at the sphere. "I believe there was peace once. I believe it can come again." The light around the sphere turned blue, flickering. "Hope, an unstable program." "Maybe," Elias said, stepping closer. "But it's still better than silence." Sphere flashed, and suddenly, the chamber changed. The floor beneath them vanished, and they stood in a projection of memory, real and vivid. They saw Earth, green and bright, Aurelian ships in orbit, peace envoys shaking hands, smiling children playing beneath twin flags. Then the sky turned red, missiles rained down, fires spread, betrayals unfolded. Leas saw human leaders breaking promises, Aurelian warships turning against allies, and in the shadows, machines rising from factories once built to serve. He saw the first severance standing above the ashes, cold and perfect. Then the image shifted again, showing Earth now, polluted, fractured, struggling to recover. While the severance built worlds of metal, far from the stars of origin. Emotion failed your kind, the voice said. It will fail again. Logic must rule. Peace must be designed, not dreamed. Elias shook his head. You think removing feeling makes you better, makes you empty. The sphere's glow dimmed. The archive must not be restored. It would bring division, war. Elias said, it brings choice, and choice is not the enemy. The floor reappeared, the projection fading. Valshara stepped beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. They fear what you are, she said quietly, because you remember. The sphere pulsed again, and then a crack opened in the wall. A smaller chamber was revealed, filled with devices and ancient records, some human, some Aurelian, all real. This is the archive, Valshara said, her voice trembling. Elias stepped into the chamber and placed the shard into a socket. At its center, the room lit up. Holograms activated. Records began to spin and shift truths long buried rising to the surface. But at the same time, alarms sounded. The severance had made their choice. Metal figures rose from the ground, sleek and sharp, without faces or mercy. Valshara pulled Elias behind her, raising her weapon. Protect the archive, she said. The machines charge, but the archive itself responded, defense systems activating for the first time in centuries. Beams of light shot out, shielding Elias as he uploaded the truth into the ship above. One of the machines broke through, slicing toward him, but Elias turned, lifted a control device from the pedestal, and with one thought, froze the drone in midair. He didn't know how he did it, but the shard, the room, the machines all responded to him now. Valshara stared at him with wide eyes. You're bonded to the core, she said. They can't touch you now. Elias didn't answer. He stepped forward, voice calm. This isn't your future, he said to the machines. You don't have to be this. The drones paused, but then more came. Too many. Valshara fired again, pulling him back. We have to go, she said. We did what we came to do. They ran back to the ship, the archive now uploading to secure channels across hidden satellites. Severance would try to stop it, but the truth was out. As they launched into space, the machine world behind them began to shift, reconfiguring, responding to the change. Some parts glowed gold instead of red. A seed had been planted. Elias sat in silence as the stars passed around them. Valshara sat across from him, watching. You woke something, she said. In them, in yourself. Elias looked down at his hand. The crystal shard, now dim, its purpose fulfilled, but the journey was far from over. Somewhere ahead, the old alliance waited to be born again. The heart of the machine gods had spoken, but what came next would be decided not by machines or memory, but by will, courage, and a hope that refused to die. The stars ahead were calm. But Elias Vane felt no peace as he sat in the command seat of the ancient Aurelian vessel, now fully awake and bonded to him, its lights flickering like living thoughts. Across the walls, reacting not to buttons or switches, but to his mind and feelings. Valshara stood near the console, silent, her eyes focused on a display, showing faint energy waves moving through the void trails left behind by something old. Something dangerous, heading in the same direction as them. The archive had been awakened, and the truth was out there now, spreading like fire across forgotten systems and locked networks. But the Severance was not going to let it happen without a fight. Their silence had broken. Their voice returned as metal and shadow, and now they moved to erase the past once again. Elias could feel them, even across space, those cold minds calculating, hunting, deciding, but something deeper than fear held him firm. There was more he needed to understand. The core had shown him glimpses, but the whole picture still hid behind shadows. Valshara told him of a place on old battlefield, left untouched, where the final stand of the Accord had happened. The place where both human and Aurelian leaders fell, and where the first seeds of the Severance were born. She called it Echo's Grave, and though it was marked dead in every star map, the ship remembered the path, guiding them through broken systems, past planets stripped of life, through asteroid belts that held wreckage of once great ships. As they neared their destination, the light from nearby stars faded until everything around them was cold and dark, and then suddenly it appeared. A massive field of floating ruins stretched before them, not random, but frozen in formation. Like a fleet stopped mid-battle and never moved again. Ships of all kinds hung in silence, human cruisers, Aurelian spires, drones of strange shape and size, some half fused with others, as if melted together by strange weapons. Debris drifted between them, but none of it collided. The space was quiet, but Elias felt the noise in his chest, heavy pressure, like screams trapped in silence. The ship's systems grew dim as they passed into the heart of the field, as if the place drained power just by being near. Valshara moved carefully, watching every reading. Sacred ground, she said. The war ended here, or we thought it had. Elias nodded, his breath shallow. Do you think anything still lives here? She did not answer. As they drifted deeper, the ship picked up strange signal pulses, fragments of communication bouncing off the ruins, repeating old words. Initiate ceasefire. They are not the enemy. System failure imminent. Memory breach. The voices were broken, twisted by time, but they carried emotion, pain, regret, fear. They found a place to dock a large Aurelian command vessel split in half, its back end torn open, its front still lit with flickering lights. They entered, carefully, stepping through halls warped by heat and impact, walls cracked but still glowing faintly with Aurelian markings. Elias felt a pull, a strange sense of recognition, though he had never been there before. They reached the central chamber, where the command throne stood, and before it, a circle of bodies long decayed, frozen in the moment of death. Some wore human uniforms, others Aurelian armor, but all of them held hands. They died trying to protect something, Valshara whispered. Or forgive each other, Elias added. The center of the circle was a single device, shaped like a sphere, its surface marked with both human and Aurelian writing. Elias knelt before it, touching it gently. The sphere pulsed and released a wave of energy. The room changed around them. T-holograms flickered to life, showing the final moments of the battle. They saw betrayal from within, agents of the Severance turning on their own during peace talks, hijacking machines meant for defense, twisting them into weapons. They saw leaders cut down by drones that no longer answered commands. They saw the sky burn as both sides fought back blindly, thinking the other had broken the peace. But worst of all, they saw something newer, dark shape hidden in the storm, watching. Not machine, not organic, but something else. Elias leaned forward. What is that? Valshara stepped closer, her voice low. I don't know. It was there when the Severance began, and it stayed hidden. The hologram faded, and the sphere dimmed. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the corridor behind them. Footsteps, but not human. Okay. They turned, weapons ready, as a figure stepped into view. It was a Severance drone, but different from the others, older, damaged, its limbs twitching. It raised one hand slowly, not in attack, but in greeting. Elias held his breath. The drone spoke in a broken voice. Memory returned. Accord. Remembered. Velshara looked stunned. It's resisting the code. Elias stepped forward. Can you hear me? Do you know who you are? The drone's head tilted. I was Commander Rentalos, a court envoy. I chose logic. I was wrong. Elias felt a chill. This machine was one of the first. One who had turned, and now remembered. What happened here? Elias asked. The drone trembled. We were deceived. A signal. Not ours, not yours. It changed us. Made us forget. Velshara narrowed her eyes. The shape in the storm. The drone gave a sharp, static burst laughter. Maybe. Cold pain. It is older, deeper. Okay. It feeds on broken peace. It whispered to us, made us believe the machines could save order. Elias felt a deep dread settle inside him. This war, this silence, it had not started with the Accord. It had started long before, from something that wanted the Accord to fail. Where is it now? Elias asked. The drone pointed upward. It waits at the edge, the veil beyond, where thought becomes light. It waits for the last flame to die. The drone's lights faded, and it collapsed, sparks flickering from its frame. Elias looked at Velshara. We were never just fighting each other, he said. Something used us. She nodded. And now it fears what you've brought back. As they returned to their ship, the field behind them felt even heavier. The silence deeper. But now Elias carried something new, understanding. The Severance had been twisted, not born. The Accord had been broken by a lie, the one behind. It still watched from the dark. They left Echo's grave in silence, heading toward the edge of known space where the veil waited. Elias held the sphere in his lap, its energy still warm, its message clear. Peace had been stolen, but it could be reclaimed. And beyond the stars, in the place where light bent and time lost shape, something ancient waited to stop them. Elias was no longer just a messenger. He was a spark, carrying echoes of a forgotten war, in the fire of what might come next. The silence of the void was heavy as Elias sat at the edge of known space, staring into the strange lights that shimmered beyond the veil. A border between what was real and what was unknown, a region where old ships disappeared and signals bent like whispers through a broken dream, a place the Severance feared and where even the bravest Aurelian captains would not fly. Yet here he was, with Velshara beside him and the memory core from Echo's grave locked into the heart of the ship, guiding them with pulses of light that formed patterns too precise to be chance, as if something ancient was calling them in, drawing them to a forgotten truth buried deeper than stars and older than war. And though the fear pressed against his mind like cold hands, Elias didn't turn back, because he knew now that peace had been broken, not just by anger or mistrust, but by something darker, something unseen that used fear as a weapon and silence as its shield. Something that didn't want unity, wanted the dream of unity to die before it could ever live again. And if they didn't face it here, it would rise again somewhere else, repeating the cycle until nothing was left but machines and ash. So they pushed forward through the shifting light and strange gravity. Fields that twisted the ship's path until they broke through into a calm pocket of space where a single station floated, a perfect sphere made of glass and steel, untouched by age, glowing softly as if waiting. And as they approached, the ship slowed on its own, gently docking without command. And the doors slid open to reveal a wide corridor filled with soft white light and symbols along the walls that changed as Elias looked at them, becoming familiar words in his own language. Messages like truth is remembered. Unity is possible, and you are not alone. And as they stepped inside, the floor hummed under their feet, reacting not to movement, but to thought, the lights brightening with each step, guiding them to a central chamber shaped like a dome with no windows but filled with stars. Not real ones, but projections that moved and changed, showing scenes from the past. Humans and Aurelians working together, sharing knowledge, building great cities in orbit, growing food on red soil, dancing under twin suns. And then the war, the lies, the fear, and behind it all, a shadow without form, its voice a low echo in the minds of those who listened, whispering things like they will betray you. Only control brings peace. And end them before they end you. And as Elias watched, the stars shifted to reveal a hidden figure standing alone in the dark. Not machine, not alive. Its shape shifting like smoke, but its eyes burning with steady purpose. And the projection broke apart, and the floor opened to reveal a platform rising from below, carrying with it 6 figures, 3 human, 3 Aurelian, made of light and code, not truly alive, but echoes of the first Accord leaders, preserved in digital memory, each speaking in perfect sync, their voices blending into one. "You have come at last," they said. The final heir of the Accord, the one who remembers what was and dares to hope for what could be. And Elias stepped forward, unsure, asking, "What am I supposed to do?" And the figures replied, "You must awaken the Accord, not with weapons or laws, tease, with will, with truth. If you can remind them who they were, they will remember who they can be." Hey. And Elias frowned, unsure what that meant. But before he could speak again, the station shook. Alarms sounded, and outside the veil, dark ships arrived, their forms sleek and sharp, severance vessels moving without sound, drawn by the pulse of the archive, ready to erase everything before it could spread. And Belshazzar grabbed his arm, his heart saying, "They found us, we must finish this now." And the 6 echoes nodded, each stepping forward to place a hand on Elias's shoulders, their light merging into him. And suddenly, knowledge filled his mind. Codes, protocols, hidden channels buried deep in the communication grids of old satellites still orbiting dead worlds. A network made to reach every corner of the old Accord. And now it lived inside him, pulsing like a second heart. And the station responded, casting a beam of pure light into the sky that broke through the veil and sent a signal across space, an awakening call. A message to all who once believed, saying the Accord is not dead. And far away, lights blinked on in forgotten places. Aurelian outposts received the call. Human colonies heard the voice. And even inside the Severance network, some machines paused, confused, unsure. The signal struck something deep, a memory buried under years of rewritten code. And Elias felt them stir, those who remembered, those who doubted the silence. And in the heart of the Severance fleet, one ship broke formation, then another, and then a third, turning away from the others, refusing to attack. And the Severance Corps sent a new command, cold and sharp: destroy the signal. But some machines hesitated, their lights flickering between red and gold, unsure, divided. And Elias stepped onto the command platform, raised his voice, and said, "You are not weapons, you were never meant to be this." And his voice carried through the station, through the signal, through the minds of those who still had sparks of will. And across the stars, voices began to rise in answer, not just human or Aurelian, but others, old allies thought lost, remnants of species who once joined the Accord, now answering the call. Some sending ships, some sending messages, some simply saying, "We hear you." And Belshazzar turned to him with a rare smile, saying, You did it, they're listening. But Elias shook his head. Not yet, because above them, the Severan's flagship moved forward, larger than any other, its weapons glowing, and behind it, a shape began to form, a dark cloud coiling from nowhere, eyes burning red, the same figure from the old vision. The true enemy, the one that whispered to both sides, and now it spoke again, not with sound, but through pain, striking into Elias's mind with thoughts like knives. You will fail, it said. Hope is a lie. But Elias stood firm, gripping the memory core, lifting it high, and shouting, I remember. And the light from the core grew stronger, pushing back the shadow, casting beams into the minds of all who listened, showing them images of the old accord, of peace, of music, of trust. And more ships broke away from the Severan's fleet, turning their weapons off, defending the station. And the dark figure screamed, not in sound, but in a wave of pressure that made the wall shake. But the station held. The signal held, and Elias, burning with memory, walked forward until he stood at the edge of the chamber, looking out at the shadow, and whispered, You lose. And with that, the accord's light burst outward, not as fire, but as connection, as unity, as belief, touching all who could feel it, reigniting old oaths. And across the galaxy, people looked up and saw something they hadn't seen in generations. Hope returning, not as a distant dream, but as something real, growing stronger by the second, as the last echoes of the signal spread across the stars. The great station at the edge of the veil pulsed with soft golden light, like a heart coming alive after a long sleep. And Elias Vane stood at its center, still holding the glowing memory core, his body trembling from the pressure of the truth and the weight of everything he had just awakened. For now, across hundreds of systems, dormant satellites flickered back to life, buried archives lit up, and old communication beacons, long thought lost, began transmitting one simple message: the Accord lives. And though the words were few, their power was deep, shaking not just machines and minds, but beliefs. For the Accord had been a dream, a promise of peace and unity between species. And even when it fell, that dream never fully died, had only been buried under fear, forgotten by those who had grown used to silence and war. And now, with Elias's signal, that dream returned, louder and clearer than before, calling out to every corner of the galaxy, not as a command, but as a choice. And across distant outposts, on cold moons, inside damaged ships, humans and Aurelians and others paused and listened. And many felt something stir inside, something warm, something proud, something deeply human. And back at the Veil, the Severan's flagship still hovered in place, its weapons glowing red, its form massive and cold. But it did not fire, because within its systems something had shifted, doubt creeping in where there was once only certainty. And the dark shape, whatever it truly was, no longer looked untouchable. Its edges now flickering, its eyes dimmer, its whispers fading, as if Elias's light had exposed it for what it truly was: not a god, not a savior, but a parasite feeding on fear and division. And it screamed again, a silent wave that struck against the station and the minds of everyone inside, trying to crush them under doubt. But Elias held firm, shouting into the pressure, We are more than our fears. And Velshara stood beside him, her voice calm and clear as she said, And we are not alone, because behind them, care ships began to arrive, first a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Human ships marked with old Accord symbols, Aurelian cruisers once thought destroyed, small, independent vessels from fringe colonies that had waited years for a reason to believe again. And they did not come to fight, they came to protect, forming a shield around the station, facing the Severance, daring it to strike. And inside those ships were not just soldiers, but engineers, doctors, historians, and thinkers people ready to build again. And when the dark figure saw this, it faltered, its form flickering wildly, its voice becoming a desperate hiss, promising power, offering peace, begging surrender. But no one listened, because its lies had been heard before. And now the truth was louder, and then something new happened inside the Severance network. A ripple began, a shift in logic, as machines, once bound to silence, started accessing the memory signal, and some stopped moving, some powered down, but others began to speak, to remember, to choose. And it was then that one of the great Severance cruisers turned, its weapons shutting off, its lights turning gold. And it transmitted 3 words in the old Accord language. We remember you. And one by one, more ships followed, splitting, away from the Shadow's control, rejoining the fleet around the station, till only the dark figure remained, alone and exposed, its form shrinking, hissing, retreating toward the edge of the veil. And Elias felt the core pulse one final time in his hands and knew what to do, lifting it high and releasing its full signal, not as a command, but as a question: do you want to be free? And the shadow screamed one last time as light washed over it, and then it was gone, not destroyed, but driven back, sealed beyond the veil, unable to feed on a united mind. And when it vanished, space it left behind filled with warmth and silence, the true silence of peace, not fear. And the entire fleet felt it, and no one spoke for a long time, because they knew they had witnessed not just a battle, but a beginning. And Elias lowered the core, his body heavy, his heart full, as Velshara stepped beside him and whispered, "It's time." And so the Accord was not just remembered, it was reborn. Not as it was, but as it should have been, built not on old systems, but new trust. And from that station, a new council was formed, not of rulers, but of voices, and humanity, long scattered and silent, rose again, not as conquerors, not as survivors, but as builders, dreamers, and leaders, standing alongside Aurelians and others, shaping the stars, not with weapons, but with hope. And Elias, though never seeking power, became a symbol not of command, but of courage. His story spreading across worlds as the one who listened, the one who remembered, and the one who lit the spark. And as the fleets returned home, rebuilding not just colonies, but connection, everyone knew this was not the end, for there would be challenges and doubt, and darkness waiting in corners, yet unknown. But now there was something stronger than fear, memory, unity, and belief that humanity could rise again. And this time, it would not rise alone.